What's up, everybody? Venraz and Makajeski here. And no, don't adjust the screen. Don't adjust the podcast. We're back. It's another episode, a bonus episode of Betting You, our college football betting podcast where we break down all the games. It was such a big week. Yes, we already talked about all the big games. There's too many bets that we didn't get to. We had to film a secondary episode. So we hope you guys are excited about this. We're going to rapid fire some of the lesser known teams. I know you're excited because you've dug into the underground. I know you got some bets on the card that you want to tell the people about.
Yeah, man, for sure. Every single week, we just have too many games to cover.
Too many games.
Can't talk about the Rices of the world, the Central Michigans. And what better person to talk about this than Ben Raza? I know watching Incarnate Word every single week, watching Mac Schools. So when we're diving into the weeds, I couldn't think of a better person to do this with.
Well, I'm excited. I do want to say first things first. If you didn't check out the main episode and you want to hear about the Florida State Clemsons, the Notre Dame Ohio States, that is available on this very channel. Don't, click right over and you will be in business. Don't forget about that episode. But if you're joining us here for the second episode, the bonus episode, hit the like button, subscribe. Hopefully you find this enjoyable. We're going to dive right into it because we still have plenty of games to get to. And we're going to start with another, again, not the marquee matchup in the Pac-12, but we've got Arizona and Stanford, 7 o'clock game. Arizona double-digit road favorite, and it's hard to blame them because I took a little peek at what Stanford did last week. Whoops, it did not go their way against the old FCS opponent. Talk to me about this matchup.
Love this matchup for Arizona, a team we've been very high on going back to last year when Jedd Fisch takes over. And it started on the recruiting trail, getting guys like Ted McMillan. You see that, and the immediate thought is, okay, this might take a little time, but he's getting them on the right path. And I think they're just a vastly better team than Stanford. Going back to our priors, Stanford was one of the worst teams in the Power Five, in my opinion. And they haven't really shown much to squash that. They had the close-ish game against Hawaii. They beat them, but Hawaii hung in there, scored 24. Got killed by USC and then got killed by they didn't get killed by Sacramento State, but they lost by a touchdown, which is just as bad as getting killed by an FBS team. They benched Ashton Daniels, and then they put in Justin Lamson for the second half. That's their quarterback situation. Just a complete disaster for Stanford. And when you go back to the offseason, they basically had no returning starters on offense. You had tight end Benjamin Jurasik and a couple offensive linemen, but really nothing there. Defense is completely rebuilt, and now they've just been absolutely gashed a couple times now. Caleb Williams threw for over 13 yards per attempt. Hawaii quarterback Braden Shager, 355 yards. Caden Bennett for Sac State threw for 279, over 8 yards per attempt, and then he ran for over 100. I mean, my goodness, absolutely demolished by an FCS team. And Arizona has done really everything we thought they would. They could have beaten Mississippi State if it hadn't been for just a turnover show by Delora, crushed UTEP. The offense is humming. Even losing one of their receivers, you fill in the gaps just fine here with Ted McMillan. And, I mean, a little revenge game for a certain former UTEP receiver here. I make this around 14 points. There's been a ton of line movement. I actually bet it on Sunday at 9.5. I don't care about the 12.5 here. Anything under 2 scores, I'll take.
Yeah, you're seeing, I have DraftKings pulled up on the screen, and we'll talk about some different opportunities, different places to shop, but 11.5 at -110, 60.5 point total, very healthy there. And Stanford, if you watched our preview shows, you know how we felt. I believe we called that they could potentially not win any conference games. And when you're losing to Sacramento State, you got bigger problems than Arizona coming to town. So it's hard to argue with that. Wildcats on the board to get things started. Now we go, to Alabama, is taking over the spotlight because of their struggles. But, Texas went in there and did handle them. And maybe it's not vintage Alabama, but Texas got it done. And then they slept walk and almost destroyed everything. But they're here. They're 15-point favorites. Now they got to hit the road and go to Waco, though. 51.5 point total. Trap game, or do you think Texas just overpowers them?
I had the same thought as you initially until I actually looked into the game. And this Baylor team is just decimated by injuries right now. I don't think they can hang in the game whatsoever. So I took 14.5 with Texas. I don't care about this. I think Texas probably wins this game by 3 scores. Blake Shapen's out for Baylor still. They've been moving to Robertson. He's been terrible under center. They have 2 defensive backs that are missing from this game. That's going to be incredibly difficult when you're matching up against Worthy and Mitchell and Whittington, not to mention Jatavian Sanders has just been cooking linebackers, absolutely demolished the Alabama linebackers. So you run 4 wide, and they're deep there too. Guys like Isaiah Nair and 5-star freshmen aren't even seeing the field for Texas. They've been inefficient at times. Quinn Ewers still has had some of the struggles throwing the ball downfield, as we saw in 2022, been a little bit better. But man, a hurt secondary for Baylor, backup quarterback. Their running back Dominic Richardson missed last week. Baylor's offense already is inefficient. They lost almost their entire offensive line. Their defense was gashed in the portal. They're currently 113th in total defense, outside the top 100 in every major metric except pass rush. Unfortunately, that goes up against Texas, whose offensive line ranks 13th in pass blocking, essentially returning every single important player from that unit. I think this comes down to Ewers. As long as he can play relatively efficient, Texas should soar past Baylor. I don't know how this Baylor team scores.
Well, like you alluded earlier, we're not really sure why I'm on this show, but I will say it might be for moments like this, because I fired up my laptop on Saturday, pulled up a tab, I watched a little Baylor Long Island, because I was like, I have to see how bad Long Island is, because they've been losing by like 70 points. And I'm telling you, obviously Baylor handled them, but it wasn't the most impressive thing I've ever seen in the world. And I came away thinking, man, 30-7 it ended up. Yikes. You mentioned Baylor's got some serious injuries. I think the drop-off has been immense. And Texas, they turned it on late against Wyoming. They're not the most consistently sound team, but when they turn it on, I think they are an elite unit. You mentioned Ewers. If he keeps a clean game here, this has to me like a 34-10, a 38-14 written all over it. So I'm with you. I laid the points on the road with Texas.
I didn't want to bet it, but the injuries got me there.
Yeah. Listen, if you can't beat Long Island was like a 60-point underdog in that game because they're quite bad. I got it on good authority.
Baylor lost to Texas State. I like Texas State, but that's not defensible. No. They lost to Utah on a backup quarterback. I mean, Baylor's in shambles.
They really are. It's a tough situation for them right now, and Texas coming to town doesn't make it any easier. Let's go to the real depths now. Colorado State was the the counterpoint to the rivalry game. We saw all the drama last week. They nearly pulled off a massive upset, and now they got to go to Middle Tennessee State as a 3-point underdog, a 52-point total. After that emotional game, can you back them, or is this actually a spot where Middle Tennessee is the rightful favorite?
I like Colorado State. They're a team I was somewhat optimistic on at the beginning of the season. Thought they had some things to figure out in year 2 of this air raid system. And I think they moved to the right quarterback in Fowler Nicolosi over Clay Millen, who's been pretty bad. But this is more a short on Middle Tennessee State than it is a buy on Colorado State. I've already been trying to buy them. But Middle Tennessee State, they lost to Alabama, got clobbered. We've highlighted this Missouri game they played where they lost 23-19, but had a touchdown and a safety go their way in the final 3 minutes of the game. And then I looked into this Murray State box score from their most recent game. They allowed 136 yards rushing to Cortez Jones on 15 carries. I don't think this defense is particularly good. Per my efficiency metrics, they come in 131st in total defense. And this tries to adjust for opponent. But again, Middle Tennessee's kind of had the most lopsided schedule you can play. You got 2 SEC teams and then an FCS. So this gets a little less noisy as the season goes on. But even with this said, 131st in total defense, outside the top 120 in every major statistical category, Colorado State has a good offense. We just saw them essentially average the same amount of yards per play as Colorado. It was the interceptions and the turnovers that got them out of that game, not to mention 17 penalties. They were live to win that game. They were winning that game in the third quarter. As long as you clean some things up, Colorado State wins that game more time than not against Colorado. We know they can score points. My question is, can they stop this Middle Tennessee State team on defense? And you do lose Kamara for the first half of this game. He had a targeting call. He's their premier pass rusher. But I think you can get enough stops here over a Middle Tennessee State team I'm not particularly interested in. Not to mention one that's really hurt. I didn't even talk about the injuries. Devin Curtis, linebacker, he hasn't played. Richard Kinley, defensive end, Jordan Starling on the defensive line. They didn't have a corner last week, and Jalen Jackson. You're not going to see great reporting on Middle Tennessee State, but having 4 starters down on defense, we'll see how many return. I'd be shocked if it was all 4, but I mean, I don't know. Tough spot for Middle Tennessee State. I think this is just a team that's hard to power rate right now because of their schedule, but not a team I was particularly optimistic in to begin the year.
So the other thing, and I can't think of another team that has this situation. Colorado State's only played 2 games. I don't know why that is, but I mean, they had a bye, obviously, but they've only played 2 pretty quality opponents. This is, I think, a pretty easy justification that this is by far the easiest team they've seen so far. Like, if we saw them beat up on a cupcake or 2, maybe this line would look a little different, but Colorado State has played 2 worthy opponents.
Middle Tennessee lost a ton of guys this offseason too, and we've now seen them, again, play 2 SEC and an FCS team. They have a new quarterback. One of their running backs is gone. Basically a whole new receiving room other than DJ Anglin Chisholm. Like, you replace like 3 starting receivers on this team. Their offensive line is really bad. They're 84th in pass blocking, 131st in run blocking. This is a team that couldn't run the ball last year. I don't think the players they bring back are going to be much better. I have better efficiency on Colorado State in almost every single major statistical category, including the ones where Colorado State's not good. Like coverage, Colorado State ranks 122nd. I have Middle Tennessee State at 126th. Oof. So it's just the better team across the board, in my opinion.
Any feel on a 52-point total? Feel about right?
I think so. I would go over if you force me to take something, just because I don't really think Colorado State's defense is great, but I have no idea what we're going to get from the Middle Tennessee State offense. So I'd rather play the side, but I would play the over on the total if I was taking something with that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't really want to mess around with that. We got plenty more games to go. I was, while you were talking, just like scrolling wildly through Odd Chopper. I do want to talk about that very quickly. Sorry for people who are like, what is this guy doing? I was just looking at all the spreads, and we got totals on the screen as well. All available to you, including if you're looking to actually get bets. The premium betting tools are over here. Positive, Parlay Builder, things like that. Come check out Odd Chopper. The link is in the description. And if you're going to do it, why not save a bunch of money? 70% off is still available. The promo code is there. You're talking like $1 a day. Get in here, maybe just for college football, maybe just for NFL, maybe for all the sports. You get everything, so you get to decide what you want to use. I really recommend it. If you've had a rough season and hasn't started great, this is the type of thing that can turn that around. So I really recommend come on in and see what all the buzz is about with Odd Chopper. Link below. And again, this part's available free. Just go to odds and live odds, and you can see right on the screen. But we've got plenty more games to go here. Where are we going next? Let's see. I got a big list. Oh, yes, Virginia Tech. This poor team. They are a mess. We knew they were going to be bad. You told me in the preseason that Virginia Tech had a lot of problems, and it turned out that they do. And they're a 5-point underdog to Marshall. 41-point total. Who are you backing here?
Talk about teams that have only played 2 games. We got good old Marshall with the early season bye last week. I'm actually going to play Virginia Tech here. I played them at plus 7.5. I don't care about the current number. I think money lines are fine here. Marshall's a really hard team to power rate, and I think they're getting a lot of credit that's not really deserved. Close win against Albany, 21-17. Albany's a pretty decent FCS team. And you dive into like yards per play, that score should have been wider. Marshall was at 6.8 yards per play. Albany was at 4.1. But ECU, they played another terrible team, 31-13. I guess that's decent. You look at the player personnel here. On offense, it's basically Rasheen Ali. He's the entire offense. Cam Fancher is going to be a game manager at signal caller for this team. Didn't look great last year, and they played just pure cupcakes. So his efficiency metrics are decent, still not great. 1 big-time throw, 1 turnover worthy play. The offense isn't asking him to do a lot, and that's probably the right approach and how you win games there. But the defense, like this Marshall defense was awesome last year. They only returned 2 guys on the whole team that had over 317 snaps. Is this defense good? Are they bad? I don't know. They're new faces that have played 2 complete cupcakes. Not that Virginia Tech is this amazing offense by any means, but I don't know what this Marshall defense has. And I'm not exactly optimistic in the offense. You stop Rasheen Ali, you stop Marshall's offense. Virginia Tech is a disaster, but they're still a Power 5 team facing a G5 Marshall that's completely rebuilt. I don't know who they're going to play at quarterback. Grant Wells has returned to practice. I think they should just stick with drones, ask him to run the ball, not turn it over through the air. But they're injured on defense. Linebacker Tisdale's been hurt. Their safety, Nasir Peoples, Allie Jennings, ankles completely destroyed. With that said, they moved the ball decently against Rutgers, especially when they had drones running it. I think they should just go full zone read option stuff with him under center. I don't think the defense is going to be able to stop anybody. But again, you only have one player to really prevent for Marshall here. Just a really undervalued spot for Virginia Tech. I think there's a lot of ways they can win this game. Not expecting a lot of points. Under might be something you look at too with the total. Just two bad offenses. I don't know what we get with Marshall's defense.
So do you care if Wells plays?
Kind of. I think he's worse than drones.
Okay, so you actually will feel if he's ruled out, you won't. That obviously isn't going to deter you. It might enhance your spot.
I don't know. They both suck. Like, I don't think Grant Wells changed this spread at all.
Okay, that's fair enough. Any interest? I can pull up. We'll see if I can find the best price, but I'm seeing 165 range for a money line.
Yeah, that's completely fine. I power rate these teams about even. And I just opening line, I just smashed that immediately. But still no real concern if you want to back spread. Money line, I think, is live with Virginia Tech.
Yeah, there's a 180 out there. That's pretty good.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah, find that. And look to that with the Hokies who, Purdue, Rutgers, these are quality defenses that I don't think are going to be analogous to what they're going to see in this situation. I almost thought, I was looking at the Thursday game and I thought this was the team playing. It's not. They play on Saturday. I always confuse Georgia State and Georgia Southern. And it's even more confusing now because Georgia Southern, as you told me the other day, they've really transformed their offense. It's a totally different look. They're a 6.5-point road favorite. You don't really see that a ton, but when you're playing a MAC school, that's what can happen. A 60.5-point total. Georgia Southern, can they throw all over Ball State? I mean, we saw Ball State take on a big-time SEC opponent earlier in the year. How do you break down this non-con game?
Love Georgia Southern here. Love both of these directional Georgia teams. I guess Georgia State's not really directional, but love both of the, G5 Sun Belt Georgia teams here. Georgia Southern, we talked about their air raid offense, had a ton of success against Wisconsin and kept that game extremely close until the 6 turnovers, just ended up adding up for this Georgia Southern team, and Wisconsin pulled away and ended up covering a spread they shouldn't have. But they were outgaining Wisconsin at halftime. Just unbelievable play from Davis Brin until the turnovers here. And their defense actually stacked up pretty well against Wisconsin too. It was only in the second half where Braylon Allen kind of got them. They held Mordecai in check, those receivers. So it was a really good performance. With that said, they did allow 285 passing yards to Jacob Zeno from UAB the week prior, 9 yards per attempt. So I don't really think this secondary is awesome. Their strength has been up front on defense, but that's not saying too much. The defense is not the strength of this team. It's offense where they're going to score on you at will. Ball State is 109th in total defense, 109th in coverage as well. Starting linebacker Clayton Cole is out. It's going to be a rough time trying to stop this Georgia Southern air raid attack. So can Ball State score on the other side, keep this close? They played 3 quarterbacks so far this year. They seem to have settled on Caden Simonza. We don't really know anything about him. He can't run. His efficiency metrics aren't great. 67% completion, 6.2 yards per attempt. He has 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but only 1 big-time throw to 3 turnover-worthy plays. That ratio is horrific. His best receiver, Ty Robinson, is out of this game. He had thumb surgery. Best tight end, Brady Hunt, still hasn't returned. He's practicing, but on a non-contact basis. He hasn't played at all this season. Vaughn Pemberton is out of this game. One of their 2 running backs still using a timeshare. So it's tough to evaluate Ball State playing 2 SEC teams and then beating Indiana State, who's a very, very bad FCS team. But man, this was a team we were selling at the beginning of the year, sold them against Kentucky. I'm going to sell them again against Georgia Southern. I know what I'm getting with the air raid attack, and Ball State's a complete disaster.
Yeah, I wanted to, and I'm going to ask you right now, but I ultimately, I don't know if we can get there. I originally, when I looked at this game, I'm fine with Georgia Southern. I have no problems. I thought, okay, this screams over. But then I looked at the pace metric. Ball State plays crazy slow. I don't know if the quarterback roulette will change that. Georgia Southern wants to play really fast. Air raid, you mentioned. I think Ball State might just drag it down to an ugly situation. Is that how you see 60.5 in terms of having minimal value?
Yeah, that's actually taken some money towards the over. It was opening around 58.5. I think you probably see some resistance here. I do not like over 60. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I wanted to get there. I'm just a little skeeved out by the way Ball State operates. They look like they're very content to play like crazy slow.
Their offense essentially is 12 personnel on almost every single play. They love to run the ball. They haven't been able to because of game script. But I don't really think that's a solid approach against Georgia Southern. You want to throw on that team.
Yeah, that doesn't. I don't know. Ball State. There's no way I can back them, so I might join you on the Georgia Southern train. They're a cool team. If nothing else, you, of course, Rice is on this thing. I was looking. Rice is here. We've done it. Rice made the show. And not only did they make the show, they didn't make it because of their opponent. It's just Rice being Rice. They deserve it. They've been playing some decent ball this year. Let's see what we've got. They are a 2.5-point favorite against USF, who they didn't shock the world because they still lost, but they did play Bama a lot closer than people thought. A 58-point total. It's down there in Florida. Can Rice keep the winning ways going?
I like Rice here. I bet it at -1.5. I think anything under 3 is fine. I will say I prefer the games we talked about ahead of this game if you're just playing like 1 or 2. But I do think there's some value with Rice. I think USF is kind of getting over-evaluated after that Alabama game. I think the close outcome has more to do with Alabama playing two incompetent quarterbacks in a game that had weather concerns. I mean, there was a delay in that game. It wasn't exactly great here. But USF, I really like what they're doing. They're actually adding a ton of premier talent in the transfer portal, but I think it's going to take a couple of years for them. They have Alex Golish, the former Tennessee OC, as their head coach now, so they're going to play fast. Eventually, they'll be pass heavy, but they don't have the quarterback to do that right now. Byron Brown, excellent rusher, but the guy cannot throw it all. He's like Jalen Maiden, if you're looking for a comparison. 52% completion, 4.9 yards per attempt. He has 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but only 1 big-time throw and 5 turnover-worthy plays. That's one of the worst ratios in the entire country. Essentially, if you stop the run game for South Florida, boom, you're in this. And Rice, the strength of their defense, if you want to call it a strength, I wouldn't say they have the best defense, but it's up front. Their weakness is coverage. Byron Brown cannot exploit that. And then conversely, I believe Rice is going to be able to pass on this team. Rice actually plays fairly pass-heavy and fast. USF has given up a ton of production, and it's not just to the guys like Austin Reed who threw for 300 yards, but they were outgained by Florida A&M 393 to 342. They allowed 374 passing yards to Florida A&M. This Rice team is going to be able to move the ball with JT Daniels, Luke McCaffrey, Bradley, their tight end has been solid. The only problem that has me a little worried is they do lose one of their tackles, Clay Servin. He started 40 straight games prior to last game, I should say. But man, I looked at their backup, Brad Bauer, who started in his place. He had an awesome game. So I don't know if the drop-off is really that steep. I mean, losing a 40 game in a row starter is not great, but Bauer played well. Anyway, this Rice offense is going to score on a defense for USF that ranks 110th in coverage. We know what Rice does. My question is, can Rice stop them? And it's another situation where really you stop one player, and I think you stop South Florida. So I will lay the points with Rice.
Do you have any interest? Because for this game, I'm fine with Rice, but I actually am going to go a different angle within Rice. Over 30.5 for their team total.
Yeah, I mean, USF plays extremely fast. And I think a lot of people, books included, are kind of clouded because of that outcome last week. USF is second in pace.
Yes.
It's unbelievably fast.
And I mean, Rice, again, Texas is Texas, but they've hung a boatload of points in the other 2 games. I think that they clear 30 here. I like the spot. -110 at 30.5. 31 has equity. I think they could hang 35, 38 points in this game.
I like that too.
Come on, Rice. Can Rice get to a bowl? Is that the world that we're living in?
I don't know. Them moving up to the AAC, I don't think helps them. But
no,
2 wins already, beat Houston, so that was beat a Big 12 team. Not a good one.
I can't keep track. I can't keep track of who's who. All right, we got a couple games left, and then, we're going to do a rapid fire at the end. Always, even though we've done a bonus episode here, if there are other games, you can always tweet us at Matt_Gajeski, at JazzRazDFS. We're here to help. We're here to grow this college football community at OddsShopper. That's what we're all about. Look at this. I didn't even do this intentionally. From the Owls of Rice to the Owls of Florida Atlantic. That is the next game that we're talking about. That's the synergy that we need on this show. They are a 15.5-point underdog. Maybe they can do what the basketball team did and pull a miracle here. Illinois, 45.5-point total. Smelling upset, or does Illinois just really, really cause problems for this FAU offense?
I bet this at -12.5 in favor of Illinois. Again, I'm trying not to put games on the list that I wouldn't bet at the current number or wouldn't consider. I still think Illinois is fine beyond 14. If you're making parlays, I think Illinois is a very safe play. Quarterback Casey Thompson tore his ACL. FAU moved to Central Michigan transfer Daniel Richardson. This guy is incompetent. Their best receiver, Jaquan Burton's in concussion protocol. Their best tight end, Khalil Brantley, the Miami transfer, hasn't played. This team is not going to be able to score. They're 117th in total offense. Offensive line's a concern. They rank 129th in run blocking. Can't run the ball. That's not something you could do against Illinois generally anyway. And Illinois had finally a really good showing, especially from Jerzon Newton on their defensive line against Penn State. So right away, can you throw the ball over top Illinois? Illinois is down their top 3 safeties, but I don't think Daniel Richardson, down 2 of his top pass catchers, is going to be able to do this. They haven't shown the ability to do it all year against worse teams like Monmouth, and they lost to Ohio in the ugliest game I've ever seen outside of the Cheez-It Bowl. So right away, I don't think FAU is going to have success scoring. Can Illinois? They had a horrific showing on offense. Luke Altmaier gets benched in their most recent game against Penn State, but they've been pretty decent aside from that. This team has scored over 20 points in their 2 previous games, scored 30 against Toledo, 23 against Kansas, with some turnovers in that game as well. But you've actually had some relatively efficient play from Luke Altmaier. The guy's very good at running, and he has 7 interceptions this year, only 5 turnover-worthy plays. 2 of those interceptions were the fault of his receivers. So, I mean, his box score stats look worse than they actually are, which is kind of a rarity. Generally, you're seeing like defenders drop interceptions and players look better than they are. Opposite here with Altmaier. And I like his receivers. He has 3 quality options in the pass game. And then you look at this defense for FAU, they don't generate any pass rush. They're 130th there. I think that's been the problem with Altmaier sometimes, is when he's under pressure, he can generate some turnovers here. Illinois does not have a great pass blocking unit. They're 124th there. So this strength, or I guess potential weakness for Illinois, isn't really exploited by FAU. I love the Illini in this matchup. Real good bounce back game after the embarrassment against Penn State here. We will stick with Illinois.
I'm going to go stick with my little theme, under 14.5 points for FAU. I don't think they can clear north of 2 touchdowns here. You're getting the hook. They could land on 14. I don't think they'll be able to run. You mentioned the quarterback situation. I'm not sure how they really pass, and I don't think the pace is going to help them either. Limited possessions potentially. FAU lands on like 10 points in this situation. I'll take the under 14.5 points for the Owls.
Yeah, FAU's 27th in pace. I think they severely
limit slow it.
Right? I agree with you. I think they slow significantly with Daniel Richardson.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that combined with a tough matchup, going against Illinois' defense, this team was not able to move the ball against Ohio. Certainly not. It's just bad. It's a tough time. They were really going for a while. You remember a couple years ago when FAU was like really good? I
remember when they had Lane Kiffin. I think they'll be good too. I like Tom Herman, especially at this level. But I mean, your Power 5 quarterback tears his ACL in week 3. Like, your season's cooked. Just get on the recruiting trail, Tom. Try not to get buried in games and play some fun football. Try to attract some transfers because of the way you play.
That's right. No doubt about it. We do have one game left, and then we're getting rapid fire. But I do want to mention, I brought up OddsShopper a couple times. It only works if you have access to books to shop lines. It only works if you have that luxury. And if you're going to add a little money to a book, make sure you're taking advantage of the promos. And BetMGM has one right now. It's on the screen. It's bet 10, get 200. What does it mean? You use the link below. Say you don't play on BetMGM and say, okay, football season, I keep losing by the hook. I've been so close. Throw a little money on another book. And when you do that, You bet 10, win, lose, or draw. You're getting $200 in bonus bets from BetMGM. You can use those for whatever you want. You're getting these in increments of these $50 bonus bets, 4 different ones. A great way to get a nice little bankroll booster. And you have access to a great book, BetMGM, just another option for you when you're doing your wagering. You got to be 21 plus. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But don't forget to explore all the options to make some quick money for the bankroll. It never hurts. Last game, we're going to squeeze this one in, and then we'll go rapid fire and we'll bounce on out of here. I got to get your thoughts because we both were on Washington last week. The spread came down before kickoff, and I'm thinking, what did I do? And then Penix almost had 500 yards in the first half against Michigan State. That's not even a joke. Michigan State is a disaster. Maryland comes to town now, 7.5. There's no way I bet Michigan State, but can we bet Maryland?
I think we can.
Okay.
Again, I think this is a mispricing on Michigan State that we've seen week over week now. I'm not sure what Michigan State has done to warrant being, within 2 scores against some of these teams. And this one I think is completely fine, even beyond 14. So Michigan just gets absolutely decimated like every stretch of the way. They play Central Michigan, who can't pass. They play Richmond, who's an FCS team, and they get buried by Washington. And my biggest problem here is they couldn't put up points on Washington themselves. 7 points here. Like, Washington essentially brought back the same defense from last year. They were 105 in total defense. Now, they've made a little bit of a jump here. I think this unit's probably going to come in around like top 70, 75. But for Michigan State to put up 7 points in that contest, I mean, it's even worse than we thought. They don't have a quarterback. They have no run game because their offensive line sucks. Their best receiver, Keon Coleman, left. They have nobody behind him. Their best recruit from the last few years, Jeremy Bernard, transferred to Washington, so they have no receivers. Their defense is absolutely pitiful, giving up 13.7 yards per pass attempt to Washington, and that's not even it. Washington's not a good run team. 5.5 yards per carry. They allowed 9.9 yards per play. Washington had a first down every single play they ran. They gave up 713 yards. Now you're facing Maryland, who's probably not the same caliber offense as Washington, but are they really that far off? This is probably a top 30 offense in the country, and they're the healthiest they've been all year. You've got solid receivers, Caden Prather, Tyrese Chambers, Jayshon Jones. Tagovailoa has been awesome for this team going back years. You return one of your guards, Gottlieb, Azzetti. That's going to be sick. Starting safety, Bo Braid is back for this game if you were scared of Noah Kim and whoever they start at quarterback for Michigan State. I don't know. I think Maryland just runs it up. No issues with the current spread. I don't know how Michigan State keeps this close.
Yeah, I mean, it's 7.5 right now, and I
think alt lines are fine here.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think alt lines are definitely fine. Michigan State has done nothing, and you just said this. Yeah, Maryland is not Washington. Few teams are, but even if they're, homeless Washington or Washington light, that's going to be enough because Michigan State doesn't know what's going on. The only saving grace is they're at home. That only gets you so far. They were at home last week too. And the program right now, talk about a lost season, just an absolute disaster. We've gone through a good amount of games. We made very, very good time. But for the people, you can highlight some of the ones you've already mentioned. But if you have a couple others that you just want to get out there into the public so they know maybe where you're leaning on Saturday, the floor is yours as we close it out here on the bonus episode of Betting You.
Yeah, and if you want these ahead of time, I put them into our chalkboard on Sunday, usually when I take them all. So that's available if you'd like. But a couple others I took and just some little tidbits on them. I have the under in the South Alabama Central Michigan game. That's mainly a pace play. It's going to be very slow. Central Michigan can't throw the ball. South Alabama would prefer not to. So I think you have a lot of run stuff working in your favor. I like Georgia Tech against Wake Forest. I took this plus 6.5, but I think this is something that's live on the money line. Georgia Tech's played a ton of really tough games. They played against Ole Miss. They actually moved the ball reasonably well. Ole Miss pulled away at the end of that game as Lane Kiffin doesn't seem to want to take his foot off the gas. And Wake Forest has played the opposite. They've had a cupcake schedule, but they've lost a ton of guys. Their top 2 receivers, Green to injury, A.T. Perry to the NFL. And I was not buying Griffiths, their quarterback, ahead of the season. I don't think he's been tested yet. So I do think there's some value on Georgia Tech. Still seeing this beyond 3. Comfortable with the current spread. But again, another one I think you could look at money lines. And then Tulsa, Northern Illinois. I think this is a game that's really interesting because Tulsa's now on their 3rd string quarterback. but I think he might be the best one that they have. I like Braylon Braxton, but we didn't really see him. And Cardell Williams has actually been pretty good for this team. He's wild with the ball. So, I mean, he has a little bit of Jaden Delora to his game. But Northern Illinois is a team I've been trying to sell more than anything. So I think you're getting a pretty good number here with Tulsa. Northern Illinois, they beat Boston College. Boston College was starting Emmett Moorhead in that game. We've seen them make significant strides since they made that change. But then they lose to FCS Southern Illinois, and they get clobbered by Nebraska. They're down a tackle. One of their starting safeties is gone. This team is 128th in total offense, 83rd in total defense, except they can't defend the run whatsoever, 116th there. Tulsa runs that air raid. They're still 61st in offensive efficiency. They're a team that really struggles on defense in coverage, specifically 133rd. Northern Illinois is not really equipped to exploit that. Rocky Lombardi's taken steps back through his career, and the receiving game has lost some options over the last couple of years. They're going to try to run. That's the strength of Tulsa's defense. I like getting the points outside 3 here. So Tulsa's the last one I'll mention of games I actually bet.
There we have it. No better way than ending with Tulsa, who was part of the Oklahoma decimation tour so far this year. We'll see what Oklahoma can do this week. They got a weird Cincinnati team. I'm sure they'll be fine. But again, all of this and more each and every week available on this Odd Chopper channel, whether you're talking marquee games, under the radar games, and everything in between. We hope you find this valuable. Like I said, let your friends know, whether you're listening to podcasts, talking, watching on YouTube. It is appreciated, but we're going to bounce on out of here and hopefully have a very profitable week 4. Win, lose, or draw. We're going to be back for week 5, recapping it all on Betting You. For me, for Matt, and for all of you guys, just enjoy the games. A great week of football ahead, and I can't wait to do it all again next week. Until next time, good luck and joy. We'll talk to you guys soon.